A marina worker walks outside for 1 minute and is never seen again. No cameras. No witnesses. Her car, phone, and wallet are left behind. Yet days later, someone with her voice appears on the radio. Police chase the wrong body, the wrong suspect, and the wrong timeline. But one hidden detail exposes everything, and it leads to a name no one was ever supposed to find. Before we begin tonight's deep dive, I want you to pause for just a second and ask yourself one question. How well do you really know the people closest to you? Because the case you're about to hear proves that sometimes the truth isn't buried in the woods, a river, or an abandoned house. Sometimes it's hiding in plain sight. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, this is where we unpack the cases that never sit right, the disappearances that refuse to stay silent, the investigations that went cold long before the truth ever had a chance to surface. Tonight's story takes us across the United States, into a quiet coastal town where one missing person report slowly turned into a decade-long mystery no one could explain. And trust me, this case is not what it looks like. If you care about justice for forgotten victims, if you believe unanswered questions still deserve real attention, make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay with me until the very end. Because the final reveal in this story changes everything people thought they knew about who vanished, and why. Let's begin. On the morning of April 12, 2013, 34-year-old Lena Whitaker left her small rental home in Port Aransas, Texas, believing it would be another forgettable workday. Lena worked the front desk at a privately owned marina office. Locals described her as quiet, reliable, and almost painfully private. She kept to a strict routine: coffee at the same corner shop, a short walk along the docks, then straight into work by 8:30 a.m. Security cameras captured her crossing the parking lot at 8:17 a.m. That was the last confirmed image of Lena Whitaker. When her shift ended at 5, she never clocked out. Her phone went unanswered. Her car, an older silver Toyota Corolla, remained parked exactly where she'd left it that morning. By midnight, her sister, Rachel Whitaker, contacted local police. At first, officers treated the situation as a possible voluntary absence. Lena had no children, no spouse, and no public social life. But when co-workers opened her unlocked desk drawer and found her wallet, keys, and half-finished lunch still inside, the tone of the investigation shifted. Lena hadn't planned to go anywhere. She had planned to come back. By sunrise the next morning, the Port Aransas Police Department officially classified Lena Whitaker as a missing person. What immediately unsettled investigators was the complete lack of a struggle. Her workstation inside the marina office looked untouched. Her computer was still logged into the booking system. The coffee she had poured for herself earlier that afternoon sat half full beside the keyboard. Nothing was broken. Nothing was missing. Detective Mark Holloway, the lead investigator, later said the scene felt paused, as if Lena had simply stood up and walked away in the middle of her shift. Search teams began combing the nearby shoreline and the surrounding wetlands. Boats scanned the channels in case she had fallen into the water. Drones swept over the marsh grass. Nothing surfaced. Lena's phone last connected to a cell tower less than half a mile from the marina at 2:41 p.m. After that, it went dark. Police interviewed co-workers one by one. No one recalled seeing Lena upset that day. No arguments. No strange visitors. No calls that seemed out of place. But one detail stood out. At 2:30 p.m., 15 minutes before her phone went offline, Lena had told a coworker she needed just a minute outside. She never came back in. No witnesses saw her leave. No cameras caught her walking off the property. It was as if Lena Whitaker had slipped through a crack in the afternoon. As the days passed, detectives shifted from searching the shoreline to searching Lena Whitaker's past. That was when the first quiet inconsistencies began to surface. Lena had lived in Port Aransas for nearly 6 years, yet no one could name a single close friend. Her landlord described her as polite but distant. She paid rent in cash, always on time, and never had visitors. When police contacted her employer in another state listed on her resume, a small tourism office in Savannah, Georgia, they learned something unsettling. No one remembered her. The business existed. The position existed. But Lena Whitaker, according to every staff member, did not. Investigators found the same problem when they traced a previous address in Gulfport, Mississippi. The apartment complex had no record of her lease. Utility accounts showed only a prepaid mobile number linked to her name. Even her Social Security activity was unusually thin. Detective Holloway quietly began to suspect that Lena's life, at least on paper, had been built in pieces, small enough to function, but never large enough to be verified. When officers finally interviewed her sister Rachel in person, they noticed something else. Rachel could describe Lena's childhood. But when asked about the last 10 years of Lena's life, her answers grew vague. She just liked to stay private, Rachel kept saying. Yet privacy alone could not explain a life that barely existed. Lena wasn't only missing. Her history was too. 2 weeks after Lena Whitaker vanished, investigators received a tip that quietly rewrote the case. A woman named Marjorie Klein, who lived nearly 3 hours away in Rockport, Texas, contacted police after seeing Lena's missing person flyer online. She was certain she had heard Lena's voice. Not in person. On the radio. Marjorie told detectives that 3 days after Lena disappeared, she had been driving home late at night when a local talk radio station aired a short recorded segment, part of a call-in show about seasonal work along the coast. One caller, introduced only as Lena, spoke briefly about working at a marina and struggling to start over somewhere new. What caught Marjorie's attention was the voice. She said it matched the missing woman's public voicemail greeting that had been released to the media. Investigators pulled the broadcast archive. The call existed, but the station had no caller ID record. The call had been routed through a digital relay service. The audio quality was distorted, as if intentionally filtered. Still, the voice, soft, careful, unmistakably female, sounded remarkably similar. If it truly was Lena, it meant she had been alive and mobile at least 3 days after vanishing. It also meant she had wanted someone to hear her. Just not the police. With the radio call shifting the timeline, detectives returned to the marina and began re-interviewing everyone who had been on the property the afternoon Lena vanished. That was when a previously overlooked name resurfaced. Evan Mercer. Evan was a seasonal deckhand hired through a short-term labor agency. He had worked at the marina for only 8 days. According to payroll records, April 12th was supposed to be his final shift. One coworker finally mentioned seeing Evan near the side dock around the same time Lena stepped outside. He hadn't stood out before. He was described as quiet, thin, and soft-spoken, someone who avoided eye contact and kept his hood up even in warm weather. When police located Evan's listed address, they found an empty rented room. The landlord said Evan had moved out suddenly 2 days after Lena disappeared. No forwarding address. No emergency contact. But what truly drew investigators' attention was his employment paperwork. His ID had been issued in Arizona just 8 months earlier. Before that, there was no employment history under his name. And when detectives ran his fingerprints through state databases, they received an unexpected alert. The prints were familiar. Not under Evan Mercer, but under a different identity. A male identity. The fingerprint hit came from a sealed juvenile record in Nevada. The name attached was Daniel Hartley. According to the file, Daniel had been reported missing at age 16 after leaving a group home outside Reno. The case was never solved. He simply disappeared. But the biometric match was not partial. It was exact. Detectives now had to confront an impossible question. How could a grown marina deckhand named Evan Mercer share the same fingerprints as a teenage boy who vanished nearly 18 years earlier? The answer seemed obvious at first: identity fraud. But what complicated everything was Daniel Hartley's case file. Daniel had been biologically male. Evan Mercer was also documented as male. Yet the radio call, the voicemail, Lena Whitaker, a woman. Investigators began reviewing archived medical and court documents tied to Daniel's juvenile placement. Buried deep inside the sealed records was a brief note referencing a court-approved name change request, filed shortly before Daniel disappeared. The new name was never recorded in the juvenile system. The file simply read, "Client to assume new identity following relocation." There was no relocation agency listed, no guardian information, no receiving facility. Only one thing was certain. Daniel Hartley had not just run away. Someone had helped him disappear. Once Daniel Hartley's identity surfaced, detectives quietly shifted their attention back to the only confirmed family member connected to Lena Whitaker, her sister, Rachel. When investigators re-interviewed Rachel Whitaker, they focused carefully on her past, specifically the years before Lena supposedly arrived in Texas. At first, Rachel repeated the same soft narrative. That Lena had always been shy. That she liked to move often. That she trusted very few people. But when detectives asked a simple question, where did Lena live immediately before Port Aransas? Rachel hesitated. Her answer changed twice. Finally, police presented her with the fingerprint information connected to Daniel Hartley. The room went silent. Rachel's composure cracked almost instantly. She didn't deny knowing the name. She didn't deny knowing what had happened in Nevada. Instead, she asked one quiet question. Is he in trouble? That single word, he, confirmed what investigators had begun to suspect. Rachel was not Lena's biological sister. She was Daniel Hartley's former foster placement supervisor. Years earlier, she had worked at the same group home where Daniel lived. Rachel had not lost a sister. She had helped create one. Under mounting pressure, Rachel Whitaker finally agreed to speak with investigators without an attorney present. What she described stunned even seasoned detectives. Years earlier, while working at the Nevada group home, Rachel had grown close to Daniel Hartley. He was withdrawn, frightened, and deeply distrustful of authority after years in unstable placements. According to Rachel, Daniel believed someone from his past was searching for him. She claimed she was trying to protect him. Through personal connections and off-the-record assistance, Rachel helped Daniel relocate out of state when he turned 18. She arranged housing. She helped him obtain documents. She helped him become someone new. That new identity was Lena Whitaker. Not simply a name. A completely reconstructed life. Rachel admitted she had introduced Daniel to a private legal clinic that specialized in confidential identity changes for vulnerable young adults, an ethically gray but technically legal service. Over time, Daniel transitioned socially and legally, living fully as Lena. Rachel remained involved only at a distance, presenting herself publicly as a sister to avoid scrutiny. But when detectives asked the most important question, why Lena vanished in 2013, Rachel's answer collapsed. "I don't know," she said. "I thought he was safe." She had not heard from Lena since the radio broadcast. In October 2014, more than a year after Lena Whitaker disappeared, hikers discovered human remains in a remote brush area outside Kingsville, Texas, nearly 40 miles inland from the marina. The remains were badly decomposed. No clothing. No identification. At first, investigators quietly suspected the case might finally be over. Dental records, however, complicated everything. The remains were biologically male. The age range was consistent with what Lena, or Daniel, would have been at the time of disappearance. But the dental structure did not match Daniel Hartley's juvenile records. Still, law enforcement made a devastating mistake. Before DNA testing was completed, a preliminary internal report labeled the remains as a probable match to the missing marina worker. The information leaked. Local media announced that Lena Whitaker had likely been found dead. Rachel learned the news the same way everyone else did, on television. But when final DNA results came back, the truth destroyed the fragile closure. The remains belonged to an unidentified transient man with no connection to Lena Whitaker, Daniel Hartley, or the marina. Someone else's tragedy had almost closed Lena's case. And whoever Lena truly was, Daniel Hartley, Evan Mercer, or someone else entirely, was still missing. Still moving. Still alive. Somewhere. In early 2016, nearly 3 years after Lena Whitaker vanished, a digital audio analyst revisited the anonymous radio call that had reshaped the case. This time, they weren't listening for emotion. They were listening for mechanics. The distorted filter had masked pitch, but not cadence. Not breathing patterns. Not micropauses between words. The analyst compared the broadcast to a separate audio sample quietly obtained from a labor agency in Coos Bay, Oregon, a recorded onboarding interview for a dockworker named Miles Carter. The similarity was undeniable. The same hesitation before sentences. The same soft inhalation after short phrases. The same rhythmic pattern when reading scripted forms. When police contacted the Oregon employer, they learned that Miles Carter had abruptly resigned less than a week earlier. He left behind a duffel bag. Inside it was a folded Texas Marina uniform. Not Evan's. Not Lena's. The badge read, Whitaker, L. Investigators finally understood what had been hiding inside the case all along. Lena Whitaker had not been abducted. She had not been killed. She had done what she had been taught to do better than anyone else. Disappear. By becoming someone new. Again. And this is where the story leaves us, with no arrest, no confirmed location, and no certainty about the name of the person who walked away from that marina in 2013. Was Lena Whitaker ever truly a missing woman? Or was she a carefully protected identity, built to survive a past no one could fix? Daniel Hartley was a boy who learned early that systems fail. Lena Whitaker was the life that gave him safety. Evan Mercer was a temporary shadow. Miles Carter became another quiet reset. Not because of crime, but because disappearance had become survival. If you believe cases like this deserve more attention, if you believe unresolved stories shouldn't fade just because they don't fit clean headlines, then this channel exists for you. Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with someone who still believes the truth matters, even when it refuses to sit still. And tell me in the comments, do you think Lena, Daniel, was running from danger? Or from the only identity that ever knew who he really was? Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and never underestimate how easily someone can vanish without leaving a single footprint behind.